I'm Charcy Curtis. Some may know me by Susan Diva. I want to thank every last one of y'all for been watching and tuning in and watching the podcast. Because if it wasn't for you, it wouldn't be a season 2. But today, we have a special guest. I have my uncle. I'm going to give him a chance to introduce himself. Uncle, tell him a little bit about yourself and what you got going on.
Yeah, this is Elder Jerry McGee here, sitting here with my lovely niece, who I'm so godly proud of to have an opportunity to be on her podcast. I'm a 63-year-old black man in America that came up in the 60s and early 70s in a city called Brooklyn, New York. You know, and they say it takes a village to raise a child. Yeah. I was raised by a village, but we have to be careful about that because sometimes the village is sick, and if the village is sick, the child will be sick.
Right.
And what I mean by that is I was raised by some unsavory characters, if you want to call it that, out there in them streets, getting money, you know, come up, you know, just grinding, you know, trying to get a dollar, you know. Right. And at that time, I think Richard Nixon was in office, and everybody was getting money because he was stealing, you know, so he didn't really care. But it's a wonderful thing to be here today and have that title called myself Elder, because when I think about the years that I was out there in the world doing what I was doing, you know, I didn't really care about much of anything, no less anybody. Right. I was all about getting my pockets fat, you know, enjoying life, doing what I wanted to do. My older brothers used to say when I was like 7 or 8 how mannish I was. I sure enough was mannish when I got like 12 years old. I got real mannish then, because up there in Brooklyn and Bedford-Stuyvesant at the time where I was raised. And let me go back and rewind a little bit. The reason I was born here in Cumberland County, you know, and with a single parent, you know, and I had 6 other siblings, you know, 7 other siblings really, but I was a rough little boy, you know, because I come up in the projects. My mom and I, like, we stayed in the projects, just me and her at the time. I had 4 older sisters and 2 other older sisters and 2 older brothers that were staying with their grandparents, you know. And it was just me and my mom at the time. And for 5 years, you know, I had all to myself, you know, and I was a bad little boy. And I mimicked a lot of the things that I seen the older guys do there in the projects, and I was in diapers, you know what I'm saying? Picking up cigarette butts, trying to smoke it, you know, and this I get from the people that helped raise me, telling me these stories about how I was, you know? But when I got older and started going to grade school, I was just a bad little boy. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I was bad, you know.
But God still used you though.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I was a bad little fella, and every time my mom would say don't do something, it seemed like my horns would go up and I'd be in it, you know. And I would get a whooping just about every day, you know. But it didn't matter to me. I was gonna do what I wanted to do, you know what I'm saying? And one summer, my uncle come down. I was in the 4th grade then. And he come down, and he had a son, and me and his son was the same age. A son named Glenn, and my aunt, his wife, cause this was my mom's brother. He figured he was gonna take me up there with him for the summer, spend some time with him and son and his wife and everybody, and I was gonna shoot on back. But I got up there, and the whole block, I was 9 years old, the whole block was like a playground, you know? And it didn't matter, you know, it was like, don't leave the block, you
Right.
know, in the block, I mean, everything was going on. And see, I was so used to being confined down here in the South as a
Right.
kid. And
It's
I was,
totally different in the city.
yeah, and I was always trying to find something to get into. But all the cats that were young as I was doing the same thing, staying in the yard. So I wanted to be with the older guys, which was my older brothers and whatnot, but my mom didn't play that. So finally I get to New York, stay up there for the summer. I like what I'm at. So now I want to stay and go to school. So my aunt tells me, well, call your mom, ask her if you can stay. And we, you know, we'd be glad to have you stay and go to school here, you know. So I called my mom up. Make a long story short, she didn't care much for it. But, you know, she said, well, if ain't nobody coasting you to stay, you know, maybe. But I'll be up there in about 2 weeks because school is getting ready to start. So she come up and she stayed for a couple of weeks, you know, visiting relatives. And I see it as vivid as it was today. She sat on the edge of my bed and asked me, she said, now I'm getting ready to leave. Do you want to stay? And I said I wanted to stay, and I could see the tear roll down her eye because I was her baby, you know. And but she, you know, she had 3 other children younger than me at the time, but you know, I was that boy, you know, that one, you know. And she said, well, okay, but if you ever need to want to come home, you know, just give me a call. So fast forwarding, I stayed up there, got to mingling. You know, I got taken under the wing of an old hustler from North Carolina, you know, and he took a liking to me, and I was a good athlete. I played baseball real well, and, you know, that attracted a lot of people, you know, so the drug dealer, he saw how the people were attracted to me, so he said, well, I'll take this cat under my wing, you know, and use his familiarity with the other folks for my advantage. But at the time, I didn't know. All I knew was, you know, I was getting money, I was living the life, I was doing things that older cats wasn't able to do, you know, I was going places, I was all into things, you know, and I stayed up there and I got into them drugs. And I got addicted in high school. And I came back here in 1975, my senior year of high school. I came back here. I didn't even stay there long enough to get my diploma because of the fact that I got into something and I had to hurry up and leave. So that's what happened. And I get here, you know, and you know, I slow down a little bit because I don't want everybody in my business, you know, and I'm trying to respect my mom and all my family, and I always wanted to keep my addiction away from my family, you know. So I had a little money because that was one of the reasons I had to live, and I went and got my own apartment. I was 18. You know, I had my own apartment. And I got to spinning records, doing different things, and I run into these 2 young ladies, and before you know it, we hooked up, and you know, that's another story. But as the time goes on, hustling, getting money, doing drugs, having an addiction, all of that, until one day, about 27 years ago, I was thinking and contemplating suicide. Because, and what I mean by that was, I wasn't gonna take my own life, but I was gonna make somebody else do it. You know, because I don't know, I just didn't believe in, you know, putting nothing to my own head and pulling the trigger, but I would force you to do it if I just needed it done, you know. And I was thinking about it, and I said, well, that's what I'm gonna do, you know, because I was tired of going up and down. I was tired of the drug life. I was tired of living, you know, because I was living foul, you know what I mean? And I went to my mother's house. It was at midnight, you know, on a Saturday night, midnight. I was working, you know, and I had put a little stash at her crib. And at the time, my wife and I, we had separated. We wasn't together, you know. And I had spoke to her on the phone that night, fussed her out, hung up the phone, went to my mom's house to get my little stash, and my pistols, and got there, and my mom opened the door, and for whatever reason, she just pointed her finger at me and said to me, "You better get your life together." And I haven't looked back since. At that moment, something came over me, and I didn't know what it was because I wasn't into church, so I don't know nothing about no Holy Spirit, none of that, But I stood there in my mother's living room, and I just began to sob like a baby, and I was just, tears was just coming down my face, and I was just as high as I could be, you know what I mean, off of narcotics that I was doing, and the tears was coming down. And so my mom went on back to her room and laid down. So I was still standing in the middle of the floor. So she came in there and she said, "Well, get back there in one of them beds, lay down and go to sleep." So I went and laid down in the bed, tried to sleep, and I couldn't sleep. And for whatever reason, I was saying, I'm getting up in the morning, I'm going to church. Had to change the clothes, everything. I had always had something at my mom's house,
right.
For emergency purposes, And I had a nice suit there. And I was thinking, I couldn't even sleep. I couldn't rest because I wanted to go to a church not knowing anything about salvation.
Right.
I just wanted to hear a preacher preach the word.
Right.
You know what I mean? I just wanted to hear a preacher preach.
Right.
And I beat my mom up, beat her to her church that morning, and got to the church, sat all the way in the back. You know how we do when we get in there. It was our first time. I sat at the back. The wall was at my back, and the preacher was preaching. And I kept feeling something hunch me. And like I said, I was still high because I was so full of narcotics and drugs from the night before, and I took a shower in the whole 9 yards, but I was still, all the drugs were still in my system.
Yeah.
And I kept feeling something hunch me, and ain't nothing behind me but the wall, me and the pew and the wall, right? Because I tried to sit away from everybody, And I kept feeling something hunching me, and I looked back and ain't nothing there but the wall, And I'm saying to myself, I hope these people don't think I'm crazy because I keep looking back,
Right.
you know what I mean? And I'm thinking maybe it's these drugs got me looking back. But then finally he had altar call. And I'm just sobbing because the whole while I'm in there, he's preaching. It's like somebody had told him about me, you know, and every word was just convicting my spirit, you know. And I didn't realize what was going on. And he had altar call. And he asked everybody to stand up, you know, and I stood up like everybody else. My suit was soaking wet because it seemed like everything was just coming out of me, you know what I mean? And he said, is anyone in the audience like to, no, well, he didn't say audience, he said, would anyone like to accept Christ as Lord and Savior? So now I look back because something done pushed me.
Right.
You know, I
Holy
look
Spirit,
back,
yeah.
and by the time I turn back around, I'm at the altar. And my mother and her friends, the ladies at the church, the mothers of the church, laying hands on me and praying. And the pastor asked me, he said, do you want to receive Jesus as your Lord and Savior? And I'm crying in tears. I'm like a baby. And I'm like, yes. You know, I'm like, I had a total meltdown. And I said, yes. And he spoke to me and gave me those words of passage, you know, that they do whenever you want to receive Christ. And I received Christ that night, that evening. And I left the church, went back to my mother's house, changed clothes, went back to the places that I normally go where we get high at, right? Without having the urge to get high, but you know, I'm just going, and I don't understand it at that time, you know, why I'm even going, right? But I go there, and same people, you know, asking me if I want to do this, if I want to do that, you know, and I'm like, nah, I don't feel like it. So finally, one young lady come by me that I was kicking it with at that time, and she walked by me because we in this joint, this house, you know, and it's a house where people go to get high, you know what I mean? And we in there, and she walks by me, and she stops and she looks, she say, "You don't want none of this, do you?" I said, "Nah." She said, "Why you glowing?" And I'm not thinking about, you know, what had transpired earlier.
Right.
You
God
know? And
got hold to you.
I said, "I don't know," you know. I said, "I don't know," right?
Mm-hmm.
So now, you know, I'm sitting there. I sat in there for about an hour, and I didn't have no desire to get high, you know. And everybody around me was getting high, you know. And I just got up and I started walking, you know. And as I was walking, God said, "See, I told you, you know, I can deliver you." And I mean, and I know it takes people. It takes people. It's like a process to most people.
Was that your first time when you realized that God was real?
It was my first time that I realized that God was able to do, because I knew God was real because my family, you know, my grandmother and them, you know, I knew He was real.
But you had to go through that yourself. It's
but I was.
But that was that one time that you
He was real to them. You know what I mean?
Now He's real to you.
Now to me, He's real. You know, and I had that opportunity to have Him as my Lord and Savior, but He told me that night after I left that spot, He said, "I told you." You know, I could hear Him just as loud as if He was talking to me audibly, but it was in my spirit.
Right.
And He said, "I told you I could do all things," you know. Yeah. And I was thinking, He said, you know, I was delivered at the altar that Sunday.
Right.
You know, never went back to drugs, never went back. And I mean, I have been doing it for like 20-something years. I had started getting high at the age of 10, smoking weed, and drinking liquor, beer, you know, sniffing glue, you know what I'm saying? The whole 9 yards at the age of 10, right? And it started to progress as I got older, and I got to getting into harder and deeper stuff, you know? And 20-something years of getting high, and then that one day to be delivered. But as time went on, and as I got into the church and got into the Word of God, I understood what was going on and how it happened for me at the altar that day. Because other people, you know, it takes a process, it takes steps for them. But I knew what happened for me, because when I used to be in the spots where we was at doing the drugs, you know, I used to always say, "Lord, if you can't do it, can't nobody do it." And they used to scatter, running away from me, like, you know, why you talking to God? You know, and I'm like, you know, my grandma told me that God can do all things. You know what I'm saying? And I had gotten fed up, you know, but I still had this addiction.
Right.
You know what I mean? But I was tired of it. You know what I'm saying? And 5 years prior to me getting saved at the altar, I can remember. Every time I got to getting high, I would say, "Lord, you know, it's all up to you." You know what I mean? But I still kept the desire. You feel me? And
so what would you tell people, like, you know, the ones that say, "I got to get it together before I go to God"?
No.
Because you'll never get it together.
You can't get it together.
Right.
You can't get it together before you go to God. If you can get it together, it means that God is already working.
Right.
You know, but we as humans, we have this thing in us from the fall of Adam and Eve. You know, that we are born like some people. Let me put it like this: with the homosexual, right? They say they're born like this, and you have people say, "No, we're not born. You're not born like that." Yes, they are. They are born like that. Understand what I'm saying? I mean, not the sexuality, but born homosexual. And the reason I say that is because we're born in sin.
Right. Yeah, we were.
And shaped in iniquity.
Yeah.
And when Adam took that fall, we had this thing about our flesh, you know, that we wanted to satisfy our flesh.
Right.
And our flesh could take us any direction it wanted to take us. That was part of our sin nature.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? So when a person say that they were born like this, I'm not talking about with the attributes. I'm talking about with the idea, with the heart to have or the heart to want to do. You know what I mean? Because we don't never have to commit the act.
Right.
See what I'm saying? We don't never have to commit the act because we feel a certain way.
Right.
You know what I mean? But when we feel a certain way and we want to satisfy or gratify that, you know, that feeling, then we act on that feeling. You feel me? So it's a whole lot of people that may have had those tendencies that never acted on it.
Right, exactly.
You know, because when you think about it, right, we got this thing that man has made up, like, you know, cooking is for women. No, everybody can cook, you know, if you want to eat. You know what I'm saying? This is for the man, this is for the woman. No, it's for anybody that can do it, because men are made up of XY cells, you know, chromosomes, XY chromosomes, right? You know, so we got both in us, you know. Now, the reason why the woman don't have it, I don't know, but I would think, you know, and I would believe that is because when Jesus, or rather when God created man, he created man in his image.
Right.
But he put man to sleep. And from man, he took from the man rib and created woman.
Right.
But he created man from the dust.
Right.
Right? So this is why they call him womb man.
Right.
Because he actually took the female from our womb.
Right.
See what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
From our womb. And that's woo man, you know, because y'all carry us. You feel me? Now, without you all, this creation wouldn't have been possible.
Right.
Because there's no way we could multiply without you all. Because a seed cannot bring a body into, how can I say this? Unless it's germinated, it has to die first.
Right.
You know. And this is why God created us the way he created us. You know, he created us man and woman because he wanted us to populate the earth.
Right.
You know. So what I mean is when you start acting on certain things, like I started acting on the drugs and all of that, you get caught up.
Oh, yeah.
And then you start being about self.
Yeah.
You know. But when I realized that God was able,
oh yeah,
you know, I
That's
stayed in church, I stayed in the Word, you know, and as time went on, God was so faithful, you know, he wanted me to, you know, evangelize a little bit, or talk to other folks, you know, to be able to explain.
Yeah, what would you tell, like, I mean, for that childhood, like if you had a chance to go back, which you can't, but as that young boy, you know, that the voice, what would you tell him that you wish somebody would have told you? And could have directed you a different direction. What would that be?
That it only lasts for a moment, you know, in the struggles that you deal with. But I believe that God has everybody go through a path.
Oh yeah.
And if I could speak to a youngster,
yeah,
because you know I have two grandsons that you know, and nephews that I pray over and pray for all the time. You know, without their knowledge, you know what I'm saying? Because I would not want them to have to go through what I went through. See, it's like God put you in place to be an example, you know. And as far as what I could tell them, I told them, my grandsons, that before I allow them to get out here and mess their life up, I would be the one that calls the police to come get them and straighten it out before it get too far gone. And they believed me because I wasn't joking. You know, I wasn't joking, you know, because I don't want a child to have to go through what I went through. Some children are not built for that.
Oh no.
You know, and that was a path that I had to travel. You know, I had to travel that path because if I had not, I doubt if I'd be where I'm at now. You know, I doubt if I'd be able to talk to the next cat that's gonna get out there in them streets and get the hustling and grinding, you know, and I come across them, you know, go to the jailhouse, you know, speak to the brothers that's locked up in confinement, you know, letting them know, you know, been there, done that, but it's a better way. You know, it's another way out. And to that kid, I would probably just take that child under my wing if he didn't have no male guidance or anything of that nature.
And I think we need more of that.
Yeah, take him under my wing and try to teach him a better way. Because it's like, you know, when I was coming up, it's like, don't do what I do. Do what I say do.
Yeah.
You know, but now it's like these kids are not hearing that. You know, if you do it, I can do it. You know, so you have to set an example by your actions. You know, and it's been a few that knew me when I was in the street that have accepted Christ. You know, I had a younger brother that was just as wild and crazy and wide open at one time, and he accepted Christ. And from my testimony and from knowing, you know, from watching and seeing me. And then I had an older brother, he passed a few years back. And but before he passed, I was preaching and he got saved under the message that I preached. You know. And 3 months later, he died.
Oh wow.
Heart attack, you know. And I was angry with God.
Oh,
you know, I'm not,
yeah.
I was angry with God. I'm not gonna front. I was angry with God for a moment because I was like, God, how you, and my brother, he could sing, you know what I'm saying? He could really sing. And I was just looking, hoping and waiting on him because he had done joined our church, you know, and all of that. And I was just waiting to hear him in the choir, you know, but God said not so. You know, and it took me a moment, took me a while to get past that, you know, that God allowed this to happen.
Oh yeah.
You know, him getting saved under a message that I preached. You know, and he was my hero. He was my Superman. You know, because no matter what I ever did in life, from a little boy on up, he would always be that guy. You know, that's gonna be there for me. I mean, I could treat him like dirt.
I remember that time you had did a service on IM4GOD. What came to you? Like, how did that come about? I
seen my niece on Facebook, which was you, and I seen her promoting IM4GOD, and the Holy Spirit said, "That's your opportunity to support a positive." Because you watched them come up, you know. Yeah. And I said, yeah, Lord. I said, so what you want me to do? He said, whatever you can do. So I pondered in my mind, what could I do? So I said, well, I had an opportunity to preach one Sunday morning. And I said, well, John 3:16 is what she got on one of those shirts. So I'm going to preach from John 3:16. And I got the message, God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, that whosoever believes in him should not perish but have everlasting life. And it goes on to say, for God sent not his son into the world to condemn the world, but that the world through him might be saved. And while I'm preaching on this word, you and nephew Danny, your son, were sitting there in the back. And I thought about all the things that were going on in the world and how so many different things had transpired. You know, you had the civil rights movement, you had all these different movements, and here it is, we have an opportunity to have a movement for God, because at the time that I preached that, it was so much going on and nobody wasn't pushing God,
Right,
God.
exactly,
It was like form and fashion. People were in the pulpit, but they were more or less concerned about the numbers
Right.
and the tithes than they were about the souls.
Exactly.
And that was my opportunity to say, either you for God or you're not for God. So let's make it a movement.
Right.
And that Sunday, I felt that I had.
God used you that day.
Yeah.
Like he always do, but he really used you that day.
And to God be the glory. There's nothing that I do as far as he's concerned that I could take credit for. I owe God so much. I owe him my life. I mean, here it is. I'm a guy that's been married to the same woman and only been married once in my whole life, and all the women and everything that I've done, and chased after and been with and did this with and did that with, and no one would ever believe that I could be married one woman for 30 years. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I have 3 beautiful children, 2 girls and a boy, and I haven't had to go to the jailhouse to get now one of them.
That's
you know
a
what I
blessing.
mean? Yeah, and I look back at all that I've done in my life, and God has truly forgiven me, for the things I've done. I've seen death has looked me in the face. I've had people try to kill me. You know what I'm saying? I mean, physically putting hands on me, guns, the whole 9 yards, knife. And God saw fit to let me live, and I'm here today because it's ordained that I be here.
Oh yeah, it was his plan. It's not our plan, it's his plan.
And that's the only reason I'm here. It's 2 reasons that I'm here, and that's God and you, and he always positioned us to be where we need to be when we need to be there,
And I want to tell you, I thank you so much. It means so much to me that you supported me from the beginning.
Absolutely.
Even when I didn't understand what God was doing, I was being my selfish ways with the brand and did not know that God was taking it to a movement. But you knew it before I did.
Yeah, absolutely.
And now it makes perfectly sense, now, because back then you couldn't tell me it was going to be where it's at now. But it wasn't my plan, it was God's plan.
God's plan.
And I had to ask you, when you wear the brand, what is it to you? What are you saying to the people?
I'm saying to the people that God is real. God is real. I'm also saying to the people, meet this young lady who started this brand. Speaking to her life. You know what I'm saying?
Keep me in prayer, Lord.
Speaking to her life. Absolutely,
Yes,
absolutely.
keep me in prayer.
Because none of us, I mean, we're not gonna walk a fine line.
Oh no, nobody's perfect.
I don't care if you're the preacher. It's gonna be moments when you're off that line. You know what I mean? But we always keep God in the center.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of people say, well, you can't involve God in anything. You can involve God in everything because that's who he is.
Oh, yeah.
If we didn't need him in everything, why would we even need him at all? You know what I mean? If we weren't sinners, he wouldn't have to send his son to die for us.
Right.
And we stop judging and start fixing our own hearts, our own hearts. And it's just like today with this election going on, with Donald Trump, Joe Biden, and all of this stuff that's going on in our nation today. I realized one thing, that what God did and when he created man and woman, and it began with Adam and Eve. All of us got the same blood. I mean, it bleeds red. You know what I mean?
Right.
Our DNA is from him.
Yeah.
Because we made in his image.
Yes.
You understand? So when I look at certain things, because I used to be the white, black, white and black, white and black, white and black. But then I started to understand as I got older and matured, right, that the same way a white man will take my life, a black man will too.
Oh, yeah.
The same way a black man will save my life, a white man will too.
Oh, yeah.
So it's a hard thing.
Oh,
it's
yeah,
it's the
definitely.
inner man.
Oh, yeah.
It's the inner man, And when we speak of man, we're talking about human race.
Right.
We're not talking about a gender.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? It's the heart of the individual that makes the difference. If you have the heart of the devil, and the devil is your father, it don't make no difference what color you are.
I sure don't.
But if you have the heart of God, and I mean truly, I'm not talking about, saying something and living another way. I'm not talking about how some of these evangelists, these white evangelists, speak one word, but then they turn their head the other way when it comes to certain issues, when it concerns other Christians.
Right.
See what I'm saying? But if you really live in that life, you can actually see past a person's skin color. See what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because it might be a white man or woman that raised you up
Oh, yeah.
to be where you need
Because
to
God
be.
uses who he want to use.
God uses who he
You
wants
don't tell
to
him who to
use.
use.
That's right. And that's why in the United States today, a whole lot we have accomplished as a people, but we wouldn't have never been able to accomplish it in this continent without somebody white helping us along the way. See what I'm saying? And that's God's plan to show us, that we're better together.
Oh, yeah.
And it's really not about color. And I understand how we can think that way because I was there, because you see all the catastrophes and the monstrosities and all the stuff that they've taken us through the years, as African Americans, as black people of African descent, I would say, because we're so mixed up, nowadays we're so mixed up. And if you followed your roots, we might find out that we have actual white people that's our family, skin tone.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying?
We'll find out a lot of stuff.
Right.
Well, I want to thank you for coming. I have to invite you again.
Thank you.
And I want to thank y'all for tuning in. And I got to tell y'all to make sure y'all check out that website because it is ready, IM4GOD.com, to get your apparel. And thank you again. And make sure you check out the rest of the podcasts. You don't want to miss none of them. You never know who's going to be on here. And like I said before, it's all about helping somebody out there. That's the whole purpose of the whole show, is just to help. Hopefully somebody's on here that you can relate to and can help you understand that you're never going to get it right. Just get that relationship with God and start today. And remember, if nobody told you they love you today, I'm going to tell you I love you. And see you next time.